Let's stay on that now. Team South Africa is hoping to warm investors' hearts in the freezing Davos at this year's World Economic Forum. This is the first opportunity Pretoria will have to push Africa's development goals on the global stage. There's also a major opportunity when the G20 comes to Johannesburg later this year. Let's discuss how the country should be approaching these forums with B4SA Chair Martin Kingston. Martin, good morning. Good to have you with us on ENCA today. I'd like to start the conversation with your thoughts around whether South Africa, business South Africa, the economy in South Africa, whether we're entering 2025 and global platforms such as the WEF on a good foot.
Yes, good morning generally to you and your viewers. There's no doubt that we've got a phenomenal opportunity here in 2025 off the back of the progress that we made last year when we launched phase 2 of the partnership with government. And as you said, the World Economic Forum in Davos, which is commencing now, and G20 and B20, which is actually already underway for the next year until November of this year when the heads of state assemble here, is a tremendous opportunity to actually promote South Africa as well as the benefits that have accrued by ensuring the collaboration and buy-in of all stakeholders, and in particular, as you say, the partnership between government and business.
For South Africans on the ground, Martin, job creation, the stimulating of the economy will be on their focus. They want to see Team South Africa come back with promises of the economy growing and more jobs being created. Keeping that in mind then, what should be the top priorities for Team South Africa as they head to Davos?
Well, part of it, of course, is to make sure that we have priorities, that we limit the focus on those areas that are going to really fundamentally move the needle and build inclusive economic growth. We need to have in excess of 3% per annum in growth to ensure that we don't just stem unemployment, but we start to build real employment opportunities, in particular, of course, for our youth, where the situation is the most extreme. What we did with the government over a year ago was to identify 3 particular constraints on the economy. They'll be familiar to all of your viewers. One is energy, the second, transport and logistics, and the third is crime and corruption. And to make sure that we could actually mobilize real resource for and in support of the national agenda there, working alongside government in all of those areas. And we've made real and sustainable progress, I would argue, in all 3, particularly, of course, in energy, where we've seen load shedding actually abate for over 300 days, I'm afraid. We'll hopefully be able to stop counting in due course. The second, transport and logistics, where we've set some very clear targets, in particular for Transnet. And thirdly, being able to prosecute successfully complex claims, cases of crime and corruption, and get off the grey list, which costs South Africa dearly. And in each of those areas, we think that we've made not only discernible progress, but we're going to build on the momentum and scale of that in the course of 2025. It's only by doing that that we'll really be able to release the handbrake on economic growth, attract substantial investment, in particular from the private sector in South Africa and from abroad. And it's that investment that's going to build the case for employment, exactly as you've said.
Let's now talk about our relations with the U.S. and what impact that might have, Martin. Of course, tomorrow, the inauguration of President-elect Donald Trump in the U.S., keeping the WEF in mind, AGOA, etc. What do you think South Africa-USA relations might look like going forward?
Well, we're hopeful that actually we'll be able to build on what has been a very progressive and positive dialogue that has been developed in particular over the past 12 months, led by government, supported again by business. We have the benefit of a very well experienced and seasoned ambassador from South Africa, Ibrahim Rasool, who's taking up office again there. We're mindful, of course, of the risks that we run in terms of AGOA. We want to promote the AfCFTA in terms of African cooperation. And we also think that for America, South Africa represents a very significant opportunity to demonstrate bilateral relationships that can drive opportunities not just in the country, but of course in the region and more broadly in the continent. So we are, I think, quietly confident that if we maintain the dialogue and demonstrate real progress, then that should be a boom rather than any sort of drag on the relationship between the two countries.
Let's then talk Africa's agenda, South Africa's agenda on the global stage. When you look at the GNU, Martin, and the different parties involved in the GNU, do you think that there's unity, not necessarily just on the vision, but the implementation for the business vision, the economic vision for South Africa? And as we represent Africa on many of these stages, the continent as a whole, is there unity?
Yeah, well, we've had our second meeting now with the government under the auspices of the GNU. That meeting took place this past week on Thursday, chaired by President Ramaphosa, with representatives from the GNU sitting in the room. I have to say we have welcomed the Government of National Unity. We think that it's going to bring the best possible talent to the cabinet table. It's going to harness a broad range of opinions which are supportive of the structural reform that is required. And with respect to implementation, no, we've seen a very positive energy both last year and again this week, which needs to be harnessed if we're going to ensure that we create the right economic environment for investment and therefore growth and employment, as we said previously. And there's no doubt again that continental growth opportunities and collaboration is equally on the agenda, not just opportunities in terms of economic stability and growth, but also stemming the challenges that we've got, where we've got civil wars across the continent, which fundamentally undermine both confidence amongst the investor community, but also those prospects for growth.
Speaking of unity, let's talk about unity among business leaders in South Africa for just a moment, Martin. I want to take you back to December 2023 when we saw that statement by the Black Business Council calling on Business Unity South Africa to immediately desist from claiming to represent all of business in South Africa. That was, of course, following a statement asserting that Business Unity South Africa will represent South Africa's private sector in the B20 and will lead B20 South Africa in 2025. Do you know whether that impasse has been resolved?
Well, I think there's been significant progress there as well, if I may say so. We met with the leadership of the Black Business Council in the course of the week, and we're committed to working with them. They were, alongside BUSA, at the genesis of Business for South Africa as a platform, you'll recall, to combat the pandemic. They participate in the steering committee that has been established in Business for South Africa. We want to crowd in all requisite resources. We've had over 160 CEOs across the breadth and depth of activity in the private sector in South Africa signing up to the pledge. We hope to have more. Many of them, by the way, are indeed members of the Black Business Council, and the Business for South Africa platform isn't exclusive either to BUSA members or BBC members. We'll take those skills and capabilities from wheresoever they come, as long as they're committed to the objectives of economic growth and structural reform, as I've already indicated.
Well, thank you so much. It does then seem that there's some progress on that front as well. Martin, thank you so much for your time and giving us a lot of food for thought and insights as we approach the first day of the WEF taking place in Davos tomorrow. That was, of course, Martin Kingston, B4SA chair. It's now 23 minutes past 7. Let's